Story 24. I had a psych professor who just disappeared in the middle of the semester. We came to class and someone new walked in and said they were asked to sub for us that day, but they had no idea why. Ended up subbing the rest of the semester. Turns out some students who followed his Instagram saw that he had finally proposed to his girlfriend of like 10 years and they presumably just up and left together. He was always telling us about how he'd been wanting to do it but didn't have the guts to. So kind of weird, but I guess it turned out okay for everyone and we were all just proud of him. Story 25. When I was a senior, I went to one of the trashiest schools in my state. Some real redneck pride kinda stuff. There were 2 freshmen, total boners, but they were tough shit apparently. I remember it was the day before homecoming. They lured one of the special education kids into the boys' restroom and barricaded the door. They proceeded to beat the ever-living shit out of this kid and take pictures of each other, forcing a barely conscious far-spectrum autistic kid to fell at them. This part I didn't see. Of course, what I did witness was after school. I got benched in football for smoking weed, so coach made me help coach freshmen so I wouldn't feel left out or useless. The freshmen practiced on a different field that got a great view of the parking lot. The victim had already been taken away and the 2 other kids were being questioned at the school. This was probably an hour after school let out. An officer came out with and off the attackers and was walking him across the pavilion. From the other side, another person, huge dude, got out of their car and started walking towards the officer and then one attacker. When they finally crossed paths, the huge guy gets one hit at the kid, knocking him down immediately, then dropped another first while the kid was flat against the concrete. Turned out the big guy was the autistic kid's dad and nobody ever saw the one attacker again. There were a couple rumors spreading. Some said the kid was killed by the second punch and other people were saying that impact scrambled his brains. The other attacker I couldn't tell you. Nobody cared enough about him to start any rumors or spread any news. Story 26. At an assembly in the auditorium there was some kind of raffle. The kid who won was gay. Maybe 1 out of the 5 or so openly gay kids in my school of 500 plus students. All of those kids were bullied and made fun of for being gay. Anyway, when they called his name and he came up on stage, it seemed like practically the entire auditorium was booing him. He went up, grabbed whatever it was he won and flipped the middle finger to everybody in the room. He got suspended for that. This would have been around 08 to 09. Story 27. At my high school there was this stairwell that people would go fool around in. It got to the point where it was called Blowjob Corner. Almost 30 years later my son goes to that school. I made a joke to him about staying away from the seaside stairs near the cafeteria and he said, "You mean Blowjob Corner? They put cameras in because of that." Cut to me with surprised Pikachu face. Story 28. A sexual assault happened in the lunchroom and the principal swept it under the rug and tried to cover it up. Then there were about 3 riots in the school. Everything got put under control at an assembly. She didn't admit to sweeping it under the rug. In fact, she didn't even acknowledge it happened even though it was brought to her attention. She just paid attention to the riots, disregarding their meaning, and no, the girl who was assaulted never got any justice. I think she transferred schools. 29. When I was in high school there were 2 fights that made national news. When I was in high school there were 2 fights that made national news because they were so bad. I only saw with my eyes one. There was a fight and the school cop tried stopping the fight and the girl broke the cop's leg. I watched that happen. The other that I didn't physically see take place. These 2 dudes were fighting over a girl, and the big dude punched the other kid so hard, he had a fucking seizure. Story 30. I never witnessed it, but I've heard about it from numerous people that went to my school. I was in my first year of high school. The high school I went to was filled with all sorts of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. There was this guy in my grade who was the kind of guy who acted all tough, acted as if he was a gangster of some sort. He sagged his pants all the way down to his knees, blasted his music on his phone without wearing any headphones. I came across him a few times, and just by his energy, I knew he was the kind of guy I would never dare to mess with. I guess things eventually caught up with him, as one day, 50 different people converged on him, people who didn't even go to my school, and I heard somebody even pulled out a knife on him. To my understanding, he cowered down and begged for his life during that whole situation. He eventually left my school, and never heard from him after that. Hearing that story, it really made me think, what did he ever do to make 50 people come after him all at once? Story 31. Dude, high schools are filled with thousands of teenagers with raging hormones, going through puberty, who often have something to prove and can be set off without warning over the dumbest of things. While I'm sure that some of these stories are made up because Reddit gonna Reddit, I haven't read a single one that seems completely unbelievable. Put that many kids in one building together for 7 hours a day and a lot more than sparks are gonna start to fly. Honestly, a day where completely fucked up shit didn't happen was more unusual than the shit that was actually happening. Story 32. When I was at 1 to 2 grades, we had this extremely friendly janitor, who could be found in his small office, and he would close the door and give you some candies. I heard about this, and never believed my friends, but I decided to go see him on one of the breaks. I know what you think, but stay with me. I knocked. He opened and asked me what my name was, and what I would like to do when I grow up. He gave me 2 candies and said, "Thank you for visiting." Yep, just a normal dude who likes kids. Also, we had computer class where we were taught stuff like Paint, Word, PowerPoint. We had about 20 Pentium 1 computers. One day, all the computers were gone, disappeared. And so was he. The candy-giving nice dude. Story 33. It's definitely not the worst thing to happen at my school in my time there, but the worst I saw personally was the day my PE class got Australian rules football, AFL, banned from the school curriculum for a year. For reference, I lived in regional Western Australia, where it was the only real football code, so this was a pretty big deal. All it took was 3 ambulances, well, the same ambulance 3 times. It was the first class where we were being taught the sport, so it was all basic drills followed by a bit of king of the pack. For our international Redditors, this involves one player, the king, kicking the ball into a group of players, the pack. Whoever catches the ball becomes king. Anyway, in a pack of nearly 20 teenagers, things can get pretty hectic. In the space of about 45 minutes, one student was knocked unconscious after being knocked to the ground, another student dislocated one of their kneecaps, and a third student broke their arm. After the third request for an ambulance, the principal intervened and canceled our class for the day and refused to let PE classes include AFL for a year. Story 34. Fights that got out of control. During a German lesson, 2 guys in front of me started arguing about a pen or something, but it escalated big time. It started with arguing, then shoving, then chairs going and fist fighting. This was mid-lesson while we were all writing and the teacher was at the front of the room, etc. Well, they kept on going, and ended up rolling over desks while people got out of the way. They somehow made it to the front of the room and were just teeing off on each other. The teacher, who was a very small woman, tried to squeeze in between them to push them apart, but caught a punch from one of the guys, then caught a punch from the other guy on the other side as well and went down. It all happened so fast that nobody could do anything. Luckily, another teacher walked past the room just as the latter moments happened and removed one of the boys, while shouting for help and stuff. Story 35. It's not really that much seeing other schools, but once I asked to go to the bathroom and when I got there I saw some kid. He was known for doing crazy shit, just standing there with a pencil in hand. There was also writing in the walls, saying "Don't let underscore come here." I assumed the crazy kid wrote it, let's call him Tom, and let's call the guy who was written on the walls Johnny. So basically, Johnny was a kid in my class who I had been friends with, and I was slightly concerned, so I went to the bathroom and then washed my hands, and I was about to leave when I saw Johnny walk into the bathrooms. Then, Tom proceeded to run at him and stab him in the arm with that pencil. Story 36. A Romanian foreign exchange student used the communal cafeteria microwave to nuke a dog shit sandwich he had brought to school with him. Literally 2 slices of Wonder Bread with a fresh pile of dog crap in the middle. Set the microwave to a half hour and walked away. By the time anyone figured out where the stench was coming from, it was too late. Cafeteria was closed for the rest of the week so a hazmat abatement team could sanitize. That smell will be in my brain for the rest of my life. Story 37. There was a car accident in front of my school. 3 kids in the class below me got hit at 95 miles an hour. The woman who hit them survived. 1 student died on impact. Another died when they got to the hospital. The third survived but was in a coma for the rest of the year. When he woke up he asked where they both were. Doctors had to lie to him about their whereabouts until his body was strong enough and the bleeding in his brain stopped. The woman got no jail time and the whole town went crazy. 2 weeks before that my best friend got shot in the face and died. We had constant therapist at the school and the road was closed until they could finally wash away all the blood. It's been 4 years and a lot of us still can't go where the crash happened without breaking down. That road before it becomes a school zone, it's 35 miles per hour. Who knows what was happening with her and how she got off free for killing 2 amazing kids. Story 38. Well, wasn't in school per se, but it was a rehearsal at a school. Just a regular orchestra rehearsal, practicing away when we all noticed that our manager, CA50F, sitting and listening, had fallen asleep. Had a little chuckle about how was it possible to fall asleep when it's just so loud, but it seemed regular, so we kept going. For about an hour. At that point we realized that she was not sleeping at all, she had just suffered a stroke. All ends well though, it was a mild one luckily, the EMTs got there fast and she made a full recovery. But those first moments after all of us realized what was happening. Man, that was horrible. Story 39. I was in 8th grade art class and part of the curriculum was to develop film in the dark room. Our teacher would send us into the dark room in sets of 3 to 4 to develop, and once he had shown us how to do it, he wouldn't really come in. My group of 3 included my buddy and one of the hot chicks in my grade. She gave him a blow job with her tits out while I watched under the red lights. First real tits I saw, plus my buddy nutting at her taking it like a champ. Weird, hot, awkward, nasty. Still don't know how to feel. Story 40. I mean, this hardly compares to most stories on this thread, but to be fair, I went to school in a small Canadian town, like 800 people max. But anyways, I was in grade 4, so I was still in the elementary end of the school, and I had to poop, so I went to the first stall in the bathroom just to see a shit sitting in the toilet that had to be as big as a Pringles can. To this day I am still blown away that some elementary kid shit a Pringles can-sized turd, not to mention they didn't wipe. Story 41. I guess this isn't something I saw, but I did witness the argument between the student and teacher. At my old school there was a girl whose mom was a teacher there. When the girl was 16 she got pregnant. Naturally the mom wanted to know who the father was since there was a chance she had him as a student. She did have him in a previous class from the year before. After a long argument between the student and teacher, or mother and daughter, the daughter gave her mom a list of names she thought could be the father. I saw the list. It had 13 boys on it. After interrogation of the boys, they got down to 4 boys who they soon found out gang banged this girl at 15. Mind you, all the boys were either 17 or 18 when the sex happened. Eventually they figured out who the boy was, and it turned out he was 18 when they had sex. Since this happened in Texas, they could either sue the boy for statutory rape or make him father the child. They ended up not suing him, and he was forced to help support the baby. About 2 or 3 years after the baby was born, the father came home one day to find his now wife getting gang banged by 8 men. They ended with divorce, and now she's a deadbeat mom who is homeless.